The most dangerous moment in a relationship with a narcissist is not when they are angry, lashing out, or actively discarding you. It is the moment they suddenly go quiet and treat you as if you never existed. Because when a narcissist does this, it signifies something absolute. They are not coming back to explain, they are not coming back to apologize, and they are not even coming back to hurt you again. Most people do not realize this until it is already over. If this resonates with you, if you have felt that eerie silence and wondered why it hurt so much more than the chaos, please take a moment to breathe. Stay with this conversation, because understanding this moment is often the turning point where your healing finally begins. When they are truly done, the relationship effectively ends. But the illusion only shatters for you. And that is not a sign of weakness. That is an awakening. When a narcissist is genuinely finished, there is no explosion, no dramatic exit, and no final argument that provides you with any sense of clarity. The loud, chaotic discard that most people expect is actually a sign of unfinished business. Rage, insults, blocking, smear campaigns, and sudden withdrawals are all emotional behaviors. And emotional behavior implies that an attachment still exists. When they are truly finished, the shift is quieter and far more unsettling. It feels like the lights were suddenly turned off in a room you were still standing in. One moment you were the center of their focus, and the next you were treated as if you were never significant to them at all. This quiet exit happens because the narcissist no longer sees a return on their emotional investment. You are no longer providing the reactions they need to feed on. You may have stopped engaging, stopped trying to explain yourself, stopped defending your actions, or simply stopped providing the emotional intensity they once required. At that point, confrontation becomes inefficient for them. Drama costs energy, and narcissists are experts at conserving energy once the payoff is gone. This silence is not maturity. It is simply disengagement. What makes this especially destabilizing is that the narcissist does not announce this departure. There is no closure conversation, because closure would require them to offer emotional acknowledgement, which they are unwilling to do. Instead, contact simply fades or stops abruptly. Messages go unanswered. Familiar patterns disappear. You are not told what changed because, from their perspective, nothing needs to be explained. They have already emotionally relocated. This is why people often feel more confused during this phase than during the periods of overt abuse. Your mind keeps searching for meaning, looking for a final clue or something to respond to. But there is nothing left to push against. That absence creates profound self-doubt. You start questioning whether you imagined the connection, whether you actually mattered, or whether you did something unforgivable. That confusion is not accidental. It is a direct byproduct of being discarded without a narrative. The quiet exit also protects the narcissist's fragile self-image. Leaving loudly risks exposure, conflict, or the possibility of being held accountable. Leaving silently allows them to preserve the internal fantasy that the relationship simply dissolved on its own. The message being sent is that you are not worth the effort of an explanation, and that is communicated not through words, but through total disappearance. Emotional detachment is far more final than rage, insults, or even a dramatic discard, because rage still contains a thread of connection. Anger is a form of emotional engagement. Yelling, blaming, threatening, or punishing shows that the narcissist is still heavily invested in your reaction. They still want to be seen, felt, feared, or validated. Even cruelty requires a certain amount of attention. When a narcissist is angry with you, you still matter in their internal world. You still occupy space, and you still have the power to affect their emotional state. That power is exactly what sustains the dynamic. Detachment is entirely different. Detachment means you no longer register as emotionally relevant. Your pain does not activate them. Your silence does not provoke them. And your presence no longer energizes them. This is not growth or healing on their part. It is a psychological withdrawal. They have shut down the emotional channel entirely because it no longer serves their needs. Where rage says that you hurt them or that you challenge their control, detachment says that you are no longer worth the emotional investment. This is why detachment feels so much colder and more destabilizing than abuse. Abuse gives your nervous system something to react to, but detachment gives it nothing. The human brain is hardwired to seek resolution through interaction, even when that interaction is painful. When that interaction disappears, the bond does not instantly dissolve. Instead, it lingers, unanswered. You may find yourself replaying old conversations, searching for a deeper meaning, or waiting for a response that never comes. Meanwhile, the narcissist has already emotionally exited the building. Detachment also serves to protect the narcissist's fragile self-perception. Engaging in rage risks exposure, and arguments can reveal the cracks in their persona. Detachment helps them avoid accountability altogether. By disengaging emotionally, they avoid any need for reflection, remorse, or repair. They do not have to admit to any wrongdoing if they simply stop caring. This allows them to move on without ever having to confront the harm they caused, effectively rewriting the history of the relationship as insignificant rather than failed. For the person left behind, this emotional cutoff can feel like complete erasure. It does not feel this way because the relationship lacked meaning, but because the meaning existed for only one side in a sustainable way. The silence communicates a brutal message. Not that you were wrong, but that you are no longer necessary. That realization often hurts more than any insult ever could. Indifference is the true ending because it signals the total absence of emotional investment. Cruelty, manipulation, and even abandonment still carry a heavy emotional charge. They are active behaviors that require attention, intention, and engagement. Indifference, however, requires none of those things. When a narcissist becomes truly indifferent, you no longer serve any psychological function in their inner world. You are not someone to dominate, punish, impress, or extract emotion from. You are simply irrelevant. This is why indifference feels so deeply dehumanizing. Human beings are wired to measure their connections through emotional responses. Even negative attention confirms existence, but indifference denies it entirely. When a narcissist reaches this stage, they do not try to win arguments. They do not defend their actions, and they do not attempt to reshape your perception of them. They stop caring how you see them because your perception no longer holds any value to them. Your feelings, your confusion, and even your intense pain no longer register as meaningful stimuli. Indifference also explains the sudden emotional flatness that so many people describe. There is no anger to respond to, no warmth to reach for, and no tension to resolve. Communication, if it exists at all, becomes entirely mechanical or ceases to exist altogether. The warmth that once hooked you is gone, and the hostility that once terrified you is gone as well. What remains is a profound emotional emptiness. This is not peace, and it is certainly not a resolution, but it is the final state of the dynamic. Understanding that this emptiness is about their limitations rather than your worth is the hardest but most essential part of your journey toward healing. You are finally seeing the reality of who they are, and while that is painful, it is the only way to eventually reclaim your own life and your own internal sense of peace. You were not forgotten because you were not enough. You were forgotten because they never knew how to hold a real connection in the first place. You are now free to fill that void with your own truth, your own healing, and your own path forward, completely separate from their indifferent gaze. It is simply absence. For many survivors, this phase triggers a deeper grief than the actual abuse itself. While abuse allows you to believe that the relationship still holds some emotional substance, even if it is toxic, indifference forces you to confront the harsh reality that the emotional reciprocity you were fighting for never truly existed. The bond you felt was real to you, but to them, it was always conditional and entirely replaceable. Indifference also serves a protective function for the narcissist. It effectively prevents any form of genuine introspection. Caring about your feelings, even in a negative way, could potentially lead to feelings of guilt, shame, or a sense of responsibility for the damage done. Indifference shuts those doors completely. By emotionally nullifying your existence, they can move forward without having to integrate the reality of what they did or how it impacted your life. This is precisely why chasing explanations during this phase only serves to deepen your own wound. You are seeking meaning from someone who has already emotionally exited the premises. The lack of a response is, in itself, the answer. Indifference is not just another phase to work through. It is the final psychological endpoint. Recognizing that truth, however painful it may be, often marks the actual beginning of you reclaiming your own emotional reality. Narcissists do not stop engaging because they have suddenly gained some profound insight or reached a new level of emotional maturity. They stop because they have successfully secured a replacement supply. This is one of the hardest truths to accept because it dismantles the lingering hope that their disappearance means they are finally reflecting, feeling remorse, or experiencing growth. In reality, their emotional system is entirely transactional. When one source of supply stops producing the necessary admiration, validation, obedience, or emotional intensity, they simply redirect their attention elsewhere. This shift can appear abrupt to you, but internally, it is often calculated and has been underway for quite some time. Replacement supply does not have to be better, healthier, or more compatible than you. It only has to be new. Novelty provides the stimulation they crave. A fresh person has not yet set boundaries, challenged their narrative, or seen behind the mask they wear. That makes the new person highly efficient for their needs. Once that new source is firmly in place, the old one becomes completely unnecessary. This is why the emotional cutoff feels so sudden. You are not being left because you failed in some way. You are being left because you are no longer considered exploitable. In much the same way, this replacement explains the chilling sense of calm that follows their departure. There is no longing, no deep processing, and no grief on their end. Their emotional energy has already been reassigned to a new target, while you are still in the process of metabolizing the loss, replaying moments in your mind, and searching for some kind of meaning. They are already busy mirroring someone new. They are telling a revised version of their story to this new person and positioning themselves as someone who is completely unchanged and unaffected by the past. The sheer speed of this transition can feel like a secondary betrayal layered right on top of the initial abandonment. What makes this especially destabilizing is that narcissists rarely announce this shift to you. There is no honest admission that they are moving on to something else. Instead, you may only sense it through a growing emotional absence, delayed responses, or a sudden, glaring disinterest in your life. If you try to confront them, they may deny it or minimize your concerns, because true transparency would expose the ugly mechanics of their behavior. Acknowledging that they have found a replacement would require them to confront their own repeating pattern, and those patterns threaten the carefully crafted self-image they try so hard to maintain. This is also why trying to compete or prove your worth at this stage is so incredibly damaging to your recovery. You are no longer in a normal relational dynamic. You are trapped in a supply economy that you never actually agreed to be a part of. Their departure is not a verdict on your value or your replaceability as a human being. It is simply evidence of how they regulate themselves emotionally. Once the function you served has been successfully outsourced, the attachment they had to you dissolves without any ceremony, leaving you to process an ending that they have already abandoned internally. Closure is never given when a narcissist is truly finished, because providing closure would require them to recognize the impact they had on you, and that recognition threatens their entire self-concept. To offer you closure, they would have to acknowledge that something real occurred between you, that genuine emotions were involved, and that their actions had lasting consequences. That level of acknowledgement introduces the need for accountability. And accountability is something that destabilizes the carefully constructed narrative they live inside. So, instead of ending things with clarity, they end them with a void. This lack of closure is not accidental or merely careless. It is entirely protective. By refusing to explain, discuss, or process the ending, the narcissist maintains a form of psychological control even in the middle of their disengagement. You are left holding all the unanswered questions while they walk away completely unburdened. The power imbalance continues, just in a quieter, more insidious form. You are out there searching for meaning, while they have already erased the need for it. People often misinterpret this silence as confusion or emotional overwhelm on the narcissist's part, but in reality, it is purely avoidance. Conversations about endings invite reflection, and reflection invites the risk of shame. Rather than risk that internal discomfort, they opt out of the interaction entirely. Messages go unanswered, and attempts to talk are ignored or met with vague, dismissive responses. The door is not slammed shut behind them. It is left hanging open just enough to keep you suspended in uncertainty. This suspended state is deeply distressing because your human nervous system naturally seeks resolution. You may find yourself replaying interactions over and over, rewriting texts in your head, or imagining one final conversation that will finally make everything make sense. But seeking closure from a narcissist is a logical contradiction. They are fully invested in protecting themselves, not in helping you heal from the damage they caused. Any explanation they might offer would be self-serving, distorted, or incomplete, and would likely be even more confusing than the silence itself. The absence of closure also allows them to rewrite the story privately. Without a final conversation, there is no shared ending to the relationship. There is only their version of events and your lingering questions. They can easily minimize the relationship, deny its importance, or recast themselves as the reasonable one who simply moved on.